everyone. I'm Wanda, Weigert, Chief Brand Officer at Globant, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this conversation. Today we are diving into a question every marketing is facing. How do we grow? How do we connect and create at a moment where AI is rewriting the rules? I'm joined by three amazing leaders that are not just adapting to this shift, but actually shaping it. I have here with me John Summers from Mercado Libre, Claudia Calori from Philips, Machado, one of the most influential creative voices in our history. And in our industry, of course. This discussion is so important is that the real transformation, it's not just technological, it's also human. And the brands are navigating this tension that we are seeing between acceleration and authenticity and experimentation and execution, and the promise of AI versus the hesitation it can create. So this panel is basically about cutting through the noise. As GAT, we have our own agency at Globant, our own network, one of the most creative networks in the world, and they like to use the word bravery, and they say that being brave is what sets brands apart. So I imagine that you, as leaders of valuable brands, of shaping how audiences are seeing companies, are used to navigating in these dilemmas. So I would really love to understand your point of views. So first, I have a question for the three of you, and we can start with whomever wants to start. It's not about AI per se, but it touches eventually what this shift is meaning. So, I'd like to start talking about how do you make sure that your brand continues to create culture and not just content in a world that is flooded with messages.
I think you nailed it when you actually highlighted the dichotomy between content and culture, and eventually is quality versus quantity. I think like we are all faced with the same issue in terms of how many platforms we need to engage with and how much we want to continuously reach out to our audiences from one side. From the other side, I think the risk that we have is really to be, rather than brand builders, bland builders, as in really providing this wallpaper of very neutral content, or if you want something that doesn't move the needle. And the challenge for us, but like also the opportunity, is how do you bring it back to who you really are, and how can you actually bring back the values, the authenticity, the purpose of your brand.
If I can add to that, the way we think about it in Mercado Libre, I think we're not always building culture. The reality is, we are a retailer, and we try to fix small things of everyday life. Okay, so what we try to do, some of our messages might be a little bit dry, might be not that new, but we try to deliver them. If it's price, it's assortment, it's convenience. Now that's what people are looking at first in a retailer. We try to do it in the most engaging and straightforward way. If we deliver on that, then we try to give you some rational reasons why to come to Mercado Libre. It might be fast shipping, free shipping, our loyalty program. And if we can create those communications in a creative way, probably that's going to be the best way to cut through in all that noise that you're mentioning.
I think it's very easy for us to get distracted with the sea of complexity that we all live in, and more demand than ever before. Life was easier when I was a brand manager. Today is much more complicated, and I think it will only get more and more complicated. So I feel that I'm a very curious person. I'm always experiment with new things, whether that's AI or new social media channels and all that. But I really focus a lot in terms of mastering some of the fundamentals, which I think is very aligned to what Claudia and Sean said. I think that you increase your chances of having the opportunity or the chance to break into culture if you're true to your brand, if you're delivering or over-delivering what consumers are expecting, and if you are creatively ambitious.
So now I wanted to jump to AI, and one of the first questions that we all get asked about, which is How do we balance AI and data-driven precision with creative instinct when building global campaigns?
So as I was thinking about this theme, I was actually, thinking about one of the most creative campaigns that I ever seen, which is something that Fer did. So the moldy Whopper, right? Would AI being able to create the moldy Whopper, by itself? And what I like to think is no, from one side, and also potentially yes, if you really ask or brief AI to get to that paradox, that provocation, and so on, which then for me would prompt the question: how are we gonna help ourselves with again augmenting our ability to imagine something? And eventually a good prompting, or a good training of models will become the new way of briefing. And, like in a good campaign, right? Like if we as clients are able to put already that germ of a creative idea into a brief, then our partners, like our fantastic partners at GUT, come with that, oh wow, like that, the brilliant ideas.
I think the way we make it work today, data is a very important part in terms of understanding insights or giving enough information to our strategies to identify those insights that can inform our campaigns. Then we move to the human element, which is the creativity is coming 100% from GUT and from our creative teams. And I truly believe that it will continue to be that the case. And then we go back to data informing the way we execute those campaigns to make sure that they are as effective as possible.
I think that AI and data, they are not at odds with doing great creative. On the contrary, I prefer to leverage that to mine insights and to find nuggets of ideas where before I was not even be able to cut through the complexity of the numbers. AI also has so many other applications in terms of being able to do better targeting, tailoring assets depending on the different needs and profiles of people. It can help us rapidly prototype things, right? I think that sometimes you have an idea that can be a little bit too abstract or too different, and it can be hard to convince internal stakeholders to buy into it just by explaining. So AI allows you to even show that, you know what I mean? With decent quality and and make it more concrete for people that maybe don't have, are not as familiar with with the creative process.
A couple of months ago, the MIT published a paper that was very famous that said that 95% of pilots failed in AI, not because of the technology, but because of execution, most probably. So, and we're also seeing that in marketing. We see tons of tools, we see tons of pilots. How have you managed to navigate in this, I don't know if to say chaos, or in this sea of endless options of AI? And if you have succeeded, if you can share an example, that would be great of what you have done.
AI allows you to fail fast and fail if you use the right way, fail without sinking too much money behind a real execution. It allows you to A/B test. It's not even an A/B test because it's not just A/B. It allows you to prototype things. It allows you to put the right message in the front of the right people. Like when I think about Mercado Libre, when I think about Philips, when I think about Activision Blizzard, where I was the CMO, we have so much data that we need to have these tools in order to take the most out of the data. If I were to say hey, what has been the most impactful use of AI for you? In my case, I think it has been a lot about targeting, hit targeting, and putting the right message in front of the right people.
I do believe that a lot of us are asked to look at what is your AI strategy. You are in marketing, what is your AI strategy? And I feel back to what Fer was saying, well, I have my strategy. How can AI help me to achieve that in a more effective way, like in a more precise way? One use case that we have at Philips, for instance, back to what Fer was saying, is on production. So we do have the opportunity of actually producing assets that a quote-unquote traditional way of shooting would cost us millions. And are also kind of accepting that even the pilots might be sunken costs, like in terms of time, but are part of the learning opportunity for us, because eventually they don't require that huge investment that in other ages, right? Like we would have faced. So the point is of like managing that is more than ring fencing, like, or kind of creating a method in the madness, is to also have that mindset and the openness to say, hey, right, like this is clearly an opportunity for all of us, specifically for us as marketeers. Let's try, like, as well to not forget eventually what is our job as marketeers, which is connecting with people in a meaningful and engaging way.
Thinking of 2026, the invitation is not how to improve how we're doing things, how you reinvent each of the pieces of that demand generation engine with the information and the tools that you have available today.
Well, thank you, guys. I have my one last question. If you want, you can answer. If not, you don't need to. In one sentence, how do you foresee the future of marketing?
So overall, I would say very optimistic. The one thing that I would love to see, it's more risk taking,
I feel like the marketeer of the future, which is, like, by the way, tomorrow, or like already today, the future, like, is relatively very close, should be curious, caring, and courageous.
I'm a very curious person. I'm always experimenting with technology. I'm a bit of a geek myself. I'm an engineer. Many people don't know that. And I spend a lot of time focusing on the fundamentals, so I tend to spend more time focusing on the things that I believe are not going to change, developing a good relationship with your creative partners and with your team, and with the cross-functional teams, having a very clear brand positioning, understand your value propositioning, having a strategy and a marketing strategy that underpins that. Sean touched a lot on that. Knowing how to brief, having a good creative criteria. Those things, I think that no matter which technology we have in place, will still be important.
I love both the three definitions and all the panel and all the thoughts and ideas that you shared. I wanted to thank you for joining us again. I think that we had so many good insights, and I think that the audience will be thrilled to hear and know you better. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll be in touch.